The purpose of this video is to show you how to graph your limiting reactant data. And so what you see here is a copy of a data table. I have not filled in columns 3, 4, and 5, even though you will have those filled in. You need that data in order to calculate column 6. But when you go to make your graph, you're only using the data from column 2 and from column 6. So column 2 is your mass of baking soda. That is going to be your X data. And column 6 is your mass of CO2, which is going to be your Y data. I've also filled in the colors from column 7, and the reason I did that is what you need to know before you graph the data is when your reaction is baking soda limited and when it's acetic acid limited. So what I've indicated here in words below the data table is that what I saw from both the visual inspection of the balloons and from when the solution changed color is that trials 1 through 4 were baking soda limited and trials 5 through 7 were acetic acid limited. So here I've placed the data into Microsoft Excel, and the first column is column 2. So this is mass baking soda with units of grams. And this button up here says wrap text. That will keep your text all in one column. And the second column here is this is mass CO2 in grams, but this is for baking soda limited trials only. And this here is my mass CO2 in grams, but for the acetic acid limited trials. So you can see I've broken column 6 up into 2 columns now. The first one is baking soda limited, the second is acetic acid limited. So now I want to graph this, and to do this I just highlight my data. Oh, and before I do that, one point. First of all, this is 1.51. In my notebook it said 1.510, and that's because you can increase the decimal point or decrease the decimal point using these buttons. So you want it to say 1.510. And also note that if I did this and I put my units in, Excel is going to think it's text. So you cannot mix numbers and letters in Excel. So I have to keep this as 0.104, and my units are up here in my header column. So now that I have my data as I need it, I select it. I can go to the Insert tab and go to this button in the center. And I want to graph. You almost always want a scatter graph when you're in a science course. So here's my graph. There's my data. I have 2 different data series. One is blue. These are my 4 baking soda limited trials. And then here are my 3 acetic acid limited trials. So you see 3 data points are in orange, 4 data points are in blue. Now what I need to do is I need to take this graph and I need to add axes titles. So I'll go over to my chart design tab here, add chart element, axes titles. I want a horizontal axis title and I want a vertical axis title. So now you'll have to go ahead and label these appropriately, mass of baking soda, mass of CO2, and you need units, grams. And also you'll have to go ahead and edit this chart title to put an appropriate title on there. And then I also need to fit a trend line on the baking soda limited trials only. So I select my data, I can go to add chart element, trend line, and I can just hit linear, but it's actually better if you go to more trend line options right away, because then you have the option to add, not set the intercept, you want to add the equation to the chart and put the r² value on the chart. So then I can move this over, make it more visible. I don't need my legend, so I can delete that. So this is all you need for your graph. Just remember that you do need to go ahead and edit the chart titles and axes titles. And then this equation right here, the equation for your line, this is what you're going to use for the rest of your calculations.